All right, we're going to start a little chat early here because at Ullman Sales San Diego, I believe we have about 200 left of these in the free, which is the face buffs. We have brand new face buffs in, and one per person as you guys just stop by at our new location out here on Harbor Island. So as we're waiting for people to log on, go ahead and check out the new face buffs. Are we having trouble with our Facebook Live thing? All right. So I am going to all right. I'm just getting everything set up for we have a little streaming error here that I think we got to fix now. All right. So as I was writing this, I found more and more things that we needed to talk about. It's not as simple as I would have originally thought, and luckily I spent a little bit of time on setting this up for roller furling because there was several things to think about as you go on, especially when we're talking about both mains and Genoa. So as we go, we will get going here. A little bit about me. I'm Chuck Skewes of Ullman Sales, and I race to Mexico up to 3 times a year, and I cruise at least once a year. I do the Ha-Ha every year. I do a little bit of other cruising. And I have been on the 5 Baja Ha-Has, and I own a sail loft in Puerto Vallarta, and I own one here in San Diego and one up in the Pacific Northwest. And I've been a sailmaker for 36 years. So we're just holding on a sec for the live thing. If we don't, we're going to continue on just on the other platform. All right. So just holding, just stalling a little bit while we get this situation set up. If you saw the factory of monitors that we set up for this thing to do this project, you'd be impressed. But here we go. Okay. Anyway, so there's limits to how much you can roller reef. You obviously can't be in these conditions roller reefing because your sails are designed for a specific wind range, and we can't use the same sails in 5 or 6 knots that we're going to use in these kind of conditions. That's just not a possibility. And so there's also a limit on how much you can roll a sail down and it effectively takes shape. And I'm going to go into the details of that a little bit here. Head sail furling, number one, you need to make sure that your system works. And part of that is you need to have your top swivel very close to the top and locked in at the rig, or have a system for preventing it from wrapping. The picture you see here on the left is a halyard wrap, and that can break your halyard, or you can even break your forestay because the force that it gets destroys the furling gear. So this is something that you really need to prevent. You want to have that top swivel near the top no matter what, not so high that it's actually popping the cap off the top of your extrusion, but it needs to be up to the top. So if you have a shorter sail, you need to have a pennant between the head of your sail and the top swivel so that your top swivel still goes to the top. Now your sail will furl just fine this way. So use a pennant. You can use a pennant at the tack or at the head, but make sure either way that top swivel reaches up near the top. So now the shape in sails, and you'll see some of this when we had our sail trim webinar, is how shape is in sails. As you can see from this picture, that this is the main area of, there's more cloth in this area. This is the deepest part of your sail. This is how we shape sails. So there's more cloth in this area. So when you roller furl a sail up, the edges are shorter than the middle, and it causes a little bit of a bag, and each revolution that you take adds one more bit of bag to the sail. And so when you start rolling a sail that doesn't have a foam luff or a rough flattening system, you can see that, like this picture, the sail becomes more full the more you roll it up, which is the opposite of you want, because you're rolling it up because the wind is up and you want a flatter sail at that time. So there's these luff flattening systems. Sometimes they're a rope luff, sometimes they're a foam luff. And what that does is it makes the middle of the roll, the middle between the head and the tack, it makes that area larger rolls because it takes up space and it pulls cloth out of the middle of the sail. Now you're still limited to about 30% roll down and still have decent shape. And here you can see the difference between this and that other picture I showed you. This is still got decent shape, not perfect shape, but it's roller reefed down and it's not this big baggy sail that you had before. And that's due to a foam luff flattening system that is a must if you're going to be reefing, because it also takes some of the load off the edges of the sail so that you don't harm your sail. And I'll show you in detail a little bit more about what I'm talking about. So you need extended head and tack patches. And the reason you have these is when you furl the sail to this point, you need to have not roll when the sail's loaded up, not to roll beyond where those patches extend to. You need to have at least those 2 or 3 layers of cloth on those edges, because those edges are going to be loaded up more than the middle of the sail. Even with the foam luff, you're still going to have quite a bit of load on the edges of those sails. So you need to not roll past those reinforcements. Those things will save your sail and keep you from permanently damaging it. You can see here's what I'm talking about right there, and it's good at the back. I have some photos. You can't see it that well in the head because the picture's taken from a long way away, but there's a doubling right there. It's the same thing as that animated picture I showed you, or that illustrated picture. And here it is at the tack. You can see it a little more clear. This is max furl for this sail when it's loaded, when you're using the sail as a sail. You don't want to roll beyond this point, because you get out into the area that's just outside that circle, it'll be a single layer cloth other than the UV cover, and you'll point load the sail and it'll damage the cloth. So the other thing you want to remember is when you roll that sail up, that your lead position changes. Now, it changes not only by the amount that you roll up around the furler, but if the clew goes up a little bit, if on a low clew sail, the clew's going to raise a little bit, it's going to change it a little bit. Or if your clew's very high, it's going to change it less, but it's going to change it. So when you have roller reefing marks like these, you roll to that point, you should know where your jib lead goes to that point. And that's something that you can talk to your sailmaker about, is exactly how to determine where your jib lead is, or go back and rewind one of my sail trims webinars, because we talked about how to find your jib lead position. So you can find it for each one of these points. And if you have these marks at your tack, you can roll up from the cockpit and not have to see if you're at that doubling point that I was just talking about for the extended head and tack patches. So it's a great idea to have these points, have the marks on your track where your jib leads go, so that when you roll a reef, you go exactly to that point. So you're not flogging the top of your sail by having a lead too far aft, or I doubt you'd have to lead too far forward, but in case you moved it, you would know exactly where that lead needs to be. So your furling sails cannot eliminate the need for storm sails. You can't sail with a sail that's designed for 8 to 12 knots in 35 plus knots of wind. You're going to destroy the cloth. It's not going to recover back. It's going to get flogged. You still want storm sails. So figure out, I got a little slide later on in this presentation that will talk about how much when you roll a reef a sail down, how much wind that you can handle it in. But it's basically max wind range for a 150 furled down 30% is basically 20 knots. So a 130 furled to a 100 is about 24 knots, and a 100 furled down to a 70 is about 26 knots. Now this is dependent on the amount of, or the weight of the cloth that you picked when you bought the sail, or whoever previously owned the sail did. And did you have a question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We already have a question. Thank you. So, and is there any chance that you can restart Facebook? If I don't think we're on there, but no, probably not. But
Yes, I can.
let's try it. Okay.
I'm going to restart our Facebook Live here.
Hopefully.
No, I can't restart it. It's airing on this.
Okay. So the question from Tom, if you could repeat it. Are the extended head and tack patches as necessary with fiber patch scale as well?
So the question was, are the head and tack patches as crucial if you have like a spring sail, fiber patch sail, or a laminate sail? Not quite, because those sails are already designed with those loads in that direction. Although the fibers get further apart as you get from the tack, and so you have to be a little cautious. You don't want to roll to midfoot, but you end up with the loads are a little more aligned with the string sail in that situation, because it's just the leech in the foot that we're talking about. So.
Before, I got one more. Is it relatively easy for you to add a foam luff and corner patches?
Is it easy to add a foam luff and corner patches was the question. It's absolutely. We do that type of thing all the time here. It's fairly inexpensive. Obviously, it depends on the size of it, but it's cheaper than a new sail, and it's if you have a high quality sail, still it's easy to do. Yeah, and it's just as effective.
Oh, thank you.
All right. So it's a great idea to have. I don't even know why I'm playing that one. To have a solent stay for your storm jib. Because like I said, the furling jib is not going to take the place of your storm jib. Now, if you have a solent stay, which is an inner forestay, and you have your storm jib raised on it, you can fly both of them together as the wind builds, and then if the wind builds beyond what you're comfortable with, you can just roll your general up and you have your storm sail already flying and ready to go. And I highly recommend this because it kind of gets you used to flying the storm jib, and you know exactly where it sheets, and everything's all set up, and you might find that your sheeting wears against your dodger or things like that. And you'll find it out in the lighter air than waiting until it's when you absolutely have to use it and you can't take care of it. So this is a great setup. This is my friend Stephen Mann that took this picture. He did a quick trip around the world, and he got some great photos for us that we're using today. Okay, so now in the mast furling mains. If you have one of these, chances are you've had one stuck in the mast. Now, there's a few things that you have to be critical, very careful about when you're furling one of these and using these mainsails. Now, that being said, when they work, they're a great thing because you can go without leaving the cockpit. You don't have to take a sail cover off. And most boats being built today have these masts. Now, the higher quality your mainsail, the less problems you're going to have with it, because most of the problems develop from sail stretch. Now, I'm going to go over how to get a good furl. Now, this is from Selden. As you can see, if you have a counterclockwise roll, you want the wind coming off of your starboard bow when you furl. And this allows the sail to make a straight entrance coming in, and all the Seldens want you to furl this direction because of the way the extrusion is built inside. It's got a little friendlier angle, and it's set off slightly to the starboard side of the boat to give it that angle. And if you have one of the other masts, I just mirrored this same slide. If you have one of the other masts, you have the same thing. If you've got a clockwise roll, you want the wind coming off your port bow. So just most of them are a counterclockwise roll, but check it and then get in the habit of always having the wind off of one side or the other doing it, and not. Here's a slide that shows us why we don't do that, because we don't want the sail to make that big 90-degree bend around the edge of the extrusion while it's furling. Because the sail isn't perfectly flat. It has shape built into it, and you will get some wrinkles, and if they have to bend around that, sometimes they'll catch and cause more tension in one area than the other, and you won't get a great roll, or you'll get jamming. And you'll definitely get jamming as it exits. That is the key. If you're religious about how to have the wind on your sail the right direction as you roll it up, which means you have to do it before you get in the marina because you might not have the room to do your tack and get that rolled up, then you're going to have most likely very good rolling for many years to come. Boom height is very important. You want it to pull evenly from the foot and the leech as it rolls up. And it takes a bit of adjustment, but once you get it adjusted, you want to clearly mark your bang and your topping lift for both of those. I mark both because one you don't want the boom to go up, you use the bang, but you also don't want the boom to go down, so that's your topping lift. You want the boom to be at that, I believe it's 87 degrees. You want it to be there and it'll pull evenly on the foot and the leech. And watch it as it rolls, and if you start seeing slack in one and tight in the other, you need to adjust your boom height and get that straightened out. You can only reef the mains about 15% down for the same reason that we install the foam luff on the Genoa. In the mast furling main, it works exactly like a Genoa because it has a wire and an extrusion inside, and that flexes backwards, which is the opposite of what masts do. So it works the same way. And there's fullness in the middle of that sail, like I showed you in that previous slide. That will cause the sail to become more full as it rolls, and it'll become baggier. So you get about a 15% roll maximum without having that sail develop a little bit of fullness in it. And if you reef the sail down to that 15% and you're out in big wind, I recommend that you unfurl it and furl it back up before stowing it for the time. Because if you leave it out, it might be over-tensioned on the leech or over-tensioned on the foot because you're in adverse conditions, and the roll will not be correct, and you may have trouble when you're taking that thing out. So now we're going to talk a little bit about in the boom furling mains. These are leisure furls, and a couple other brands are out there. They're expensive, but what they get you is you get to have a lot more sail area and a little better shape to your mainsail. So that's the key to in the boom furling mains. This is one that we just built for a catamaran. We're building with more roach now. So maximum reefing on in the boom furling mains is this area that the cloth is tripled up and it goes just beyond usually the middle batten. That is your maximum reefing sailing point. Anything more than that, you can damage the sail, and your sail's obviously reduced probably 2/3 of the sail area by that point, so it's already in that point where you should probably not be having that main up and you could go to a trysail. You also want to only reef to just below the battens. That keeps the sail from trying to accordion on the mandrel because of the high loads. And it keeps your sail in better shape, and it keeps the furling much better. And once you see these work a little bit, you understand that a little bit more. That's why they put this batten on these mains down there at the bottom to keep that same sort of system in place. So you just reef them just below the batten each time. Now, proper furling. I went out in the marina, and in 15 minutes, I could find a dozen or more poorly furled sails that are either going to come unfurled when the wind picks up in the marina when you're not there, or you're going to end up with permanent sun damage on a sail, or you're going to not know about it, and then later on it's just going to shorten the life of your sail. So I'm going to give you some examples here. This sail right here, I went and saw. You can see that it has part of the sailcloth exposed. The UV cover, it's white so it's hard to see. UV cover is not covering the entire sail while the sail is stowed. There's nobody on this boat. I walked by it and took this picture. This is the case of too much leech tension when it's being furled. The top of the sail is furled much tighter than the bottom, so the bottom is a bigger roll and it took more in. Now we go into same brand sail, similar size boat. This is one that has the opposite problem. The boom was too high the leech was too loose, so now they have a loose leech roll and a tight foot roll, so now the sail is exposed at the bottom. We get these sails in every week that have that cloth rotten and tearing on these sails, and it becomes a problem. And it's not just at the expense of the repair, it's that you lost sailing time. Right now, we want sailing time, so think about this when you're putting your boat away. Here's the classic. People leave the clue hanging out of their sail. Now, this sail even has a little bit of a UV cover back here by the clue, so that if the clue was stuck out, it was covered, but it's even open beyond that. Now, if you had a great furl, perfect furl, and you had tension on your sheets when you left your boat, and you had just that little piece of UV cover sticking out, you'd probably be okay. But as the wind blows when you're not there and the roll gets tighter, you're going to get exposed sailcloth, and that won't last nearly as long as the UV cover. And this is the part of the sail that has to be the strongest. So the other thing that happens is if that pulls out and the sheet goes slack, that's a recipe for when the wind really blows to have the sail unfurl at the dock and be rattled away. So this is another classic. If somebody just has the head of their sail sticking out of their sail cover, the reason you have that sail cover is to keep the UV off of the sail. And to have that, one of the high load parts just sitting out in the elements is not wise, and it's really going to kill the sail. And I'll go into how fast some of the stuff can rot here in a minute. All right, this is properly furled. You only see this umbrella, you only see the UV cover that's sticking out, and it's even all the way up. Somebody did a great job furling this sail. And here's another very well furled sail. This one's right in front of my office here. It's literally 150 feet from me. And what you see here is there's like 3 wraps of sheets around the furling, and it's completely covered, and the sheets have got some tension on them so that they're not going to come unfurled. I like to see at least 2 wraps, if not 3 wraps, around the furler at the end. That'll keep any amount of unfurling, it'll still stay furled. So this slide is from Gortonara, which is a thread that we use on our higher end sails for people heading off to Mexico or other high UV environments. And they just took thread, which is the same thing that they use basically to weave sailcloth, and stuck it in the Arizona desert and tested it on its loss of strength. And you can see that it loses over 60% of its strength in 1 year. Now, your sailcloth does have resins on it and a couple things to protect it, but those things wear off. And so being exposed to the sun, in 1 year, you can lose 60% of the strength once those fibers are exposed. And then you lose another 20% the next year. And in the 3rd year, you're down to 90% loss of strength from what you had just 3 years ago. So it's really important that you keep these things really covered well and furled properly. All right, do we have any other questions? This is a fairly simple topic tonight, but as you can see, there's quite a bit to it.
Let's give it some time. If you guys have questions, type it in.
And don't forget that we have, for the next, I think we gave out a bunch of them today. We had a limited amount that we were giving out, but the face buffs, if you stop by here at Ullman San Diego. All right.
You want to announce Thursday?
Yeah, Thursday's webinar is a racing webinar. It's at 6 p.m. on Thursday. We're going to try to do the Facebook Live again. We have some streaming issues here on the other computer. We're going to talk about systems for starting, to have a great start, to have a system in place that you do every single time, and a protocol that you follow. And if you just take these systematic approaches to it, you're going to have much better starting. It's a way to, if something goes wrong, you know how to adjust it easier rather than just going back and forth on the start line and trying to get it at the gun. There's a whole system in place that we do every time, and that's going to be for racers, and that's here on Thursday. All right, you guys have a nice evening and enjoy the rest of the evening here. We have great sunny weather here in San Diego, and I hope you guys do too.